Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the People's Court. The people are real, but the names have been changed to protect the innocent. Welcome back. This is a fun way to recap session 3, 2, and 1, but also preview session 4. I'm going to use a case study that's actually true. I talked to one of my family friends over spring break. Their son is a freshman at CMU, and he told me something interesting that I thought would really play well in terms of helping us understand Fink's integrated course design and how far we have come in just 3 short sessions, going on our 4th session. So I want you to think like we are the jury, okay, and I'm the judge, and I'm trying to walk you through this case study to understand who is at fault for the student not meeting the learning goals that were expected out of them. Now, I changed the name to a young Adam Barragato because this student reminds me so much of me as a student, and I thought that I could give some insight as to how the student is thinking because I was the exact same way. Plus, I'm protecting the innocent. All right, so before you rush to judgment, try to go through Fink's integrated course design with me and try to think about, okay, who's really at fault here in terms of why the student did not meet the learning goals expected out of them. All right, so let's talk about the case study. The assignment was really simple. Feed a family of 4 for $20 a day. Okay, maybe it's not simple, but the nice thing is you just have to meet their caloric intake. So the student feeds them ramen for a week, gets a 50% without any feedback back from the instructor. Talk to the mom. Mom says, well, the student's lazy. This is what he gets. But we're better than that, right? We're going to look at this deeper using Fink's integrated course design by asking, what are the situational factors? What did the learning cycle look like? I wonder what the criteria of the assignment was. Was there a rubric, I wonder? And then finally, how well did the activities, the assessment, and feedback line up to really prepare the student? Well, let's take a look. You see, one of the things that I think happened was in this case is that this was a traditional backwards design where the instructor said, okay, I want you to remember everything that we talked about from the beginning of the unit. And then what ended up happening was the student was so far off base that they failed and they did not meet the learning goals. But again, we're better than that, right? We're not going to rush to judgment. We're going to look at the situational factors. So what do we know about the student? Well, if the student is in fact a lot like me as a freshman student, guess what? If we're talking about self-authorship, guess what? I'm in external formulas, which means I'm just following formulas. I'm just going to do the easiest task possible, just get it done and over with, and go hang out with my friends. I probably didn't know a whole lot about the instructors because a lot of my instructors didn't really let me know about them. And as a result, I wouldn't feel comfortable going to the professor's office hours. And after talking with the actual student in question, he said, nope, I didn't feel comfortable talking to the teacher. All right, so let's look at teaching and learning activities. I wonder what this looked like. Well, let's use this as an opportunity to recap and then maybe ask questions about each step along the way for the student, even though we don't know the answers. So when we talk about the experience, right, when we're introducing a student to content, what's the best way to expose them to it? Well, if you remember in our last session, Elisa Lucas just was on fire, right? With her Fire Up the Classroom presentation, she knows how to get students engaged in ideas that are really exciting and enjoyable, and she really brings the ideas to life because she provides that hook, just like Mark Francic. Now, that's what she does inside of class, but you can do this outside of class via the flipped classroom, and if you want some more ideas, again, revisit Bowen Chapter 5, or I wrote a pretty lengthy flipped classroom blog post that really talked about what this could look like in terms of that experience, but also how to get students all the way to active testing in terms of using the flipped classroom approach. But there is a lot of information about the experience. All right, so now the hard part is really holding students accountable, right? You've consumed information. Now, how do we make sense out of it? Well, do you remember Emily Webster? She killed it with clickers, right? She did a phenomenal job of showcasing that think, pair, share, active learning strategy and how that can be used to hold students accountable to what they're learning, whether in class or outside of class or wherever. Now, outside of class, you see me use journals. I love this. By the way, I hope you're reading my feedback. Every week I give you tons of feedback. I hope you enjoy it. I love reading your journals. Please keep journaling. I also use a course pack to hold students accountable by having them actually write down information before we come to class. That's how I hold students accountable in that class. Obviously, in ATL, we use journals, but there's a lot of other ways to do this. Now, one of the things I wonder is, for this particular case study, I wonder, gee whiz, I wonder how the student was engaged in this experience. Was it enjoyable, or was it just simply, here's the information? Were they held accountable, whether through active learning strategies like think, pair, share? Were they asked to journal? I wonder about all these things. I don't know. The student couldn't answer these questions because he really didn't know. He's a freshman student. He was like me. Learning came second to everything else, unfortunately. So abstract conceptualization. Drawing these conclusions, right? Now we're starting to get into higher order thinking. And so how do we do this in class? Well, obviously, Emily Webster, again, had a great way to use the progressive case study to continue moving forward throughout a case study and asking students to reflect on it. Outside of class, you can use case studies like what I'm doing right now. And again, please see the blog post in session 3 about how to use case studies as well in terms of the flipped classroom. But I wonder if the student was given opportunities to really hypothesize and think about this question at a deep level in class. Like, gee, I wonder, how do families on a budget, how do they afford food for their families and still meet the caloric intake and stay healthy? I don't know. Finally, active experimentation, right? This is really something that we forget about, which is the classroom assessment techniques. And these are these low stakes assignments that just really help us understand where the student is at. Now, I don't know if the student necessarily had these opportunities or not, but this is where it gets really important when we think about this fidelity feedback. A lot of this happens outside of class, but some of it can come inside of class. Now, the student told me they got no feedback whatsoever, but we know that frequent and immediate feedback can come from these classroom assessment techniques, and it can come right to the student, and it can be very quick and easy for us. But the other thing is, I wonder if there was a rubric available for the actual student in question. And then finally, was there any feedback? Unfortunately, like I've said multiple times now, there was no feedback. And this is where DWEC really showcases how to motivate learners through challenges. It's clear this was a challenging assignment and the student did not put much effort into it. But I wonder if growth mindset feedback would have encouraged and motivated the student. I'm not certain. But you can see how all this plays a role then as we lead into feedback and assessment. Now, one of the enduring questions I have about this session is, how can we plot out assessments to keep our students on track to meet our learning goals? That's a really tough thing, right? So we have formative assessments. That's one way to do it, right? If you use these in class, it helps you understand where the student is before a big assessment. But it also provides this growth mindset feedback. Like I just said, it keeps them motivated. Now, for summative assessments, this is a little bit different, right? We need to make sure that we're being clear in terms of what we want the student to showcase learning in. I don't think the student realized that all this information that he was supposed to showcase learning in was taught to him in some way, but it obviously didn't stick to him. And that's probably why he didn't do so well in this assignment. And then finally, thinking about forward-looking instead of backward-looking. Can students use this information to solve a problem in the future? That's forward-looking assessment. In this case, yes, this assignment was a forward-looking assignment. And to be honest with you, if we look at Webb's depth of knowledge or Bloom's taxonomy, we can see that, yeah, this definitely is above analysis, synthesis, evaluation, right? This is definitely in one of those categories. And when we talk about Webb's depth of knowledge, it was definitely in level 3 and somewhat at level 4. And so when you're designing these summative assessments, you want to think about Bloom's taxonomy. Is this really above application, or is this really, in between Webb's depth of knowledge level 3 and 4? These are things to think about. And all these together lead us to a conclusion. I wonder if this type of forward-looking assessments using all the different things we discussed, and including the situational factors, would have made the student meet that learning goal. I don't know. You're the judge here. You decide whether or not you think the student's at fault or the instructor's at fault. To be honest with you, I think they're both at fault. But I think that if we work together with our students and explain to them all these things that we're doing and we're learning about in ATL, I think it's really going to help them reach those learning goals. However, at the end of the day, students do have a mind of their own, and if they're like me as a freshman student, they're probably not going to put as much effort as they should, but we can still help them to meet those learning goals. Because the last thing we want is students to be in this camp, right? Where at the end of the unit, they really haven't showcased learning, but maybe they haven't had opportunities to get that feedback. So these are things to think about, and I hope this case study was helpful for you to see what you're learning. Again, this is a lot of information, and I hope this case study really helped us to understand we've come a long way in a short period of time. All right, sorry for how long this was. I tried to keep it short, but there's a lot of information to cover. Talk to you guys soon, and I can't wait to see you all on Friday.